Welcome back to our Python tutorial series. In our previous lessons, we covered the basics of Python and learned about different data types, such as integers, floats, strings, booleans, and lists. In this lesson, we'll introduce the concept of variables in Python. Let me first create a REPL. I'm choosing Python as a language and we'll give it a name as variables. Create REPL. If your REPL did not open automatically, you can simply go to My REPLs folder and choose your REPL. Variables are used to store values in your program. These values can be of different data types, such as integers, strings, or even more complex data types like lists. You can assign a value to a variable using the equal sign. So, on the left-hand side of an equal sign, you will specify your variable name, and on the right-hand side, you will specify the value of that variable. Let me give an example. An x. This will refer to the variable name, and I will put a value for that variable as 5. And this is the value of this variable. You might remember this kind of demonstration from your math classes. In math classes, you can also write that like this. But in programming, you cannot do that. As you see this red mark, this kind of editors are smart enough to warn you when you put something not acceptable, to warn you about there is something wrong in your code. So when you define a variable and its value, you need to put the variable name and the value at the right place. So now the value of 5 is stored in the variable x. We can use the variable name x to refer to that value 5 throughout the program. Think of a variable as a box where you can store different things. You give the box a name so you can easily refer to it later, and then you can put anything you want inside the box. You can also take things out of the box and replace them with something else, just like you can change the value of a variable in your program. Variables are a powerful tool for keeping track of data in your code, just like boxes help you keep track of things in real time. Why do we use variables? Well, we use variables in programming because they allow us to store values and reuse them later in the program. If you need to use this value of 5 multiple times in your program, instead of writing the same value of 5 multiple times, we can assign it to a variable and refer to the variable throughout the program. This not only makes our code more readable, but also easier to maintain and update. Additionally, variables allow us to perform operations on data without affecting the original values, which can be very useful in many programming scenarios. Let me demonstrate it with an example. After my variable x, I will specify another variable and I will call it as y. So I wrote my variable name first, then I am using the assignment sign. Now I'm gonna do an operation here like x plus 1. As you might guess, the value of the variable y will be 6. Let us print our variables and see what we will get. Let me give another example. This time I will define a variable which holds a value of string data type. I am using the assignment sign. Because this variable will hold a string data type, I need to use either single or double quotes. And it will be hello. Now, the second variable will be str2. Now I will specify the third one. Now we will perform an operation here. But first, let me explain the plus sign in programming. The plus sign can do an operation of addition, just like in math. But in the programming world, you can use that sign, that plus sign, for the string concatenation as well. We will see what is a string concatenation later in this course. But for now, for just our example, I want to show you what it looks like. The string concatenation is the operation of joining strings end to end. For example, str1 plus str2 performs an operation of joining these two strings. Now let us observe the values of these three variables by printing them on the console. The value of str1 is hello. The value of str2 is world. And the value of str3 is hello world. Because we concatenate str1 and str2 and assign the result of this operation to the variable of str3. We concatenated two strings without affecting the original values of those string variables. Performing operations on data without affecting the original values can be very useful in many programming scenarios. Variables can hold different data types, such as integers, floats, strings, booleans, lists, and so on. Let me delete them all. Now let us define variables for each data types. In the next lesson, we will cover commands in Python in more detail, but I want to briefly explain what they are now since we will be using them later in this lesson. Commands are lines of text that are not executed as part of the code, but are instead used to provide information or clarification about the code. They start with the hash symbol, and everything after the hash symbol is considered a command, so they are not going to be executed as part of the code. Let me demonstrate it with an example. We use hashtag or pound sign. By using that sign, we are telling something to our Python interpreter. Like the line coming after the hashtag sign will not be executed as part of my code. So I'm telling the interpreter, just ignore that line. I'm just providing information for my code below. Don't see it. Ignore it. Now we can continue where we left off. I'm gonna define variables with different data types. Before defining my variable, I will provide an information about it, like integer variable. By using this hashtag sign, I am saying that this line is not be considered as a part of my program. Just ignore it. My variable name will be age, like 99, and float variable temperature. I will specify the value as Fahrenheit, like 72, but if you live in Europe or somewhere else, you can specify in Celsius. And string variable. Name Poogie. Poogie is my dog, by the way. She's adorable. Okay, let's move on. We can put some space between them for readability. It's raining. True. And list variable. Fruits. If you remember from our previous lesson, we use square brackets for making a list. So I am putting square brackets. The items of this list will have string data type. So I'm opening my double quotes and apple, orange, blueberry. That's enough, okay. When we talked about data types in the second lesson, I gave examples of integers, floats, strings, boolean, and lists. I also mentioned more complex data types like tuples, sets, and dictionaries, even though we haven't covered them in detail yet. Now I am gonna do that so that you can start getting an idea of what these data types look like and how they can be used in Python. Let's start with tuple. Tuple variable. I'm gonna give a name as point to my tuple variable. For a list, we use square brackets. However, for a tuple, we use parentheses. And between the parentheses, I'm gonna write the items of my tuple. Next, set variable. And now I'm gonna give a name as number to my set variable. Now, we use square brackets for a list. We use parentheses for a tuple, and for a set data type, we use curly braces. And between the curly braces, I'm gonna write the items of this set. For instance, 1, 2, 3. Our last variable example will hold a dictionary data type. I will give it a name as person. Now, just like set variables, we use curly braces for dictionary variables as well. Sets are defined by a collection of unique unordered elements. In contrast, dictionaries contain key value pairs where each key is unique and associated with a value. Name. This will be the key, and after specify a key, I need to use a column. Now I'm gonna specify a value for that particular key as Pinky. And like we use in the other collections to separate each item, in the dictionary we use comma as well to separate each item. And the other key value pair will be H column 11. The third key value can be country column USA. Before we close this lesson, I want to show you some rules and best practices for choosing variable names in Python. Variable names should be descriptive and meaningful, so you can easily understand what they represent when you read your code later. They should also be written in lowercase letters, with underscores separating words and multi-word variable names. It's also a good idea to avoid using reserved keywords as variable names. Otherwise, you will get an error when you try to run your code. What do I mean by that? What are reserved keywords? Reserved keywords are specific words that have a predefined meaning in Python, so they cannot be used as variable names. Some examples of reserved keywords in Python include if, else, while, for, def, and class. If you want to see the full list of reserved keywords in Python, you can simply do a quick Google search or visit the official Python documentation website. There, you can find a comprehensive list of all the keywords that are reserved in Python. Variables can be named almost anything, but there are a few rules to follow. Variable names can only contain letters, numbers, and underscores. Variable names cannot start with a number. We can specify variable names like number 1 or number 2, but because of the variable names cannot start with a number, we cannot specify a variable name like one number. Variable names are case sensitive, so point with a lowercase p and point start with an uppercase p are different variables. It's important to choose descriptive variable names that make sense in the context of your program. For example, if you are storing the age of a person, you might name the variable age. Let me give you some more examples of variable names that are both descriptive and meaningful and follow the naming rules and best practices in Python. Like customer name or name of employees. Or we can specify a variable name such as average temperature or total sales or user age, or if it will be a boolean type, we can specify a variable name like is active. It will take a value of true or false. Product price, order date, max value, discount percent. These names are clear, concise, and easy to understand, making the code more readable and maintainable. It's important to choose variable names that accurately reflect their purpose and to follow naming conventions and best practices for consistency and clarity. Remember, choosing good variable names is an important skill in programming, so practice as much as you can. In our next lesson, we will learn about commands in Python. Commands are a way to add explanatory notes to your code, which can be helpful for yourself and others as well who may read your code. So don't forget to practice writing your own code with descriptive and meaningful variable names, and stay tuned.